a limited edition interview series with all of the speakers coming to Warrior Unchained live in 2023. Welcome, Kelly.
Hi, Wendy. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited. So, obviously, this is your first year for Warrior. So, I am excited to introduce you to everybody who's going to be attending and anyone out there who is going to be buying a ticket to join. So, let's just jump right in. And do you want to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. So, my name is Kelly White, and I am a co creator and co producer of the podcast, The Mother Daughter Journey. I am a certified coach principles teaching partner in conversation, as well as an author and a speaker.
Awesome. So, an author. So, what books have you been in? Did you write your own? Is it a compilation? What did that look like?
It's a compilation. The name of the book is Shining a Light on Grief, Volume 2. And yeah, I wrote a chapter about Abigail and I's mother daughter journey and the grief that surrounded that.
Wow. And that's a big topic, the
Yes.
mother-daughter journey, because you cover a lot of different the topic itself covers many generations, relationships, traumas, generational trauma. So, I know you have a podcast, of course. Let's talk about a little bit about your podcast and what does that look like? How do you tackle those big, heavy subjects with the mother-daughter journey?
I just head on. Abigail and I, so the first season actually is wrapping up. We have one more episode that's really just a wrap up. Really, that's all it is. And
Okay.
we talk about all sorts of things, just her and I, basically hashtag real talk. We talk about ego, we talk about forgiveness, we talk about mental illness, and yeah, we just share a little bit about ourselves and our story and go for it.
And I love the real talk because I feel like that's what really people relate to the most is the real talk.
Yeah.
Because obviously, I mean, we see movies, we see TV series, and it's very not real because the struggles that we face. I mean, there's real deep emotions. There's, you know, deep ego type of things
Yes.
that are involved and stuff. So, what are some of the challenges and things that you've had to conquer and overcome to get to where you're at now?
Oh boy. So acknowledging that I live with a mental illness. I mean, I live with clinical depression and OCD, acknowledging that my daughter lives with those things and that my mother did. So it's like just kind of going through all of that, of accepting and acknowledging that, and kind of breaking the stigma and the barriers that there are surrounding that, the shame that kind of came with it, and shrugging that off as no, it's not shameful. The way the world handles it is, and we're just going to kind of stand in our power and talk about it.
Yeah. And, as you're saying that, I'm thinking about, where you're at right now. You're kind of like a middleman in a way because you've got your mom, things that you're, with that relationship that's very complex. And then you also have the one with your daughter that's also very complex. So can you give a little insight into how you balance those two? Because I'm sure they're very different relationships.
They're very different relationships. And to be brutally honest, the relationship with my mother and myself is not great right now. Um, for me, I operate from a place of I need my, not need, but I want my children to be proud of who I am and be able to come to me more than I am concerned about making my ancestors comfortable, if that makes sense. I love my mother and I am actively working on getting to a better place, but I'm also actively working on changing the generational patterns that brought my daughter to a place where, she almost wasn't here. And
Right.
so it's difficult. It's just a difficult journey all around.
Yeah. And I think part of it is, when you're willing to change and work on yourself, you can only engage with people who are a little at least willing to meet you in that headspace in that area where you can both grow. And if you have the opportunity with your daughter, maybe not with your mom, then that's where you have to pursue, right?
Yeah, we can't control what other people think of us, right?
Right.
Or what they think of what we're saying or how they receive it. We can just be compassionate and kind and speak our truth. And that's what I'm doing. that's what I'm doing. And my mother will, I do believe, because I don't think there are any lost causes in relationships. I think we'll get there.
Yeah.
I think we'll get there. It's just, we're in the new stages of this, her and I, where Abigail and I have been working on it for 10 years.
Right. And I think there's a different perspective too in your relationship, maybe compared to your mom, because you have done some of the work,
Yes.
and Abigail's done some of her work. And so it's a little easier to kind of meet each other halfway, where sometimes, I had that with my mom too. You can only meet them so far.
Right.
If they're not coming to meet you too, it's not that it's a lost cause. It just takes more time, and it's maybe like a shift in mindset for them that eventually that you just have to hope maybe that they can come around to, because you can't make them.
Yeah, it's funny. So my therapist and I talk about this frequently. Not like, it's
Yeah.
obviously a topic of conversation. And she says, refers to it as like life is a river, right? So, and right now, this is the way that life is flowing.
Oh wow.
And eventually, the winds will shift or a rock will move in the river and the pattern of that river will flow in a different way. And so right now, this is how the dynamic of our relationship is.
Right.
Hopefully a rock will shift and that'll change sometime in the future.
Right. So let's talk about some of the positive things that have come out of this. So, obviously you and your daughter have put in a lot of work, and you're very close now. And I know a lot of your backstory, of course, but just share a little bit of because you've been through all the challenges, you've put in all the work. Where what does that look like now, and what are some of the things that you've done together?
What it looks like now is we're fantastic. Best friends, business partners, basically just growing side by side and, as she likes to put it, cheering each other up the hill. And so it's allowed us to open up this business that we call the Mother Daughter Journey and the podcast and just tell our story. And the response has been kind of incredible. People need to hear the story. Like, people need to know that there's a other side to the struggle, and that there's a way to get there, and that they're seen and they're not alone. And so it's allowed us to help people and hopefully impact some change.
Yeah, and I relate with that, because there's a feeling as a mom sometimes you feel like you're doing it all wrong. There's just days where you just feel like, man, can I just get this right? Where's the handbook? you know? And then to have a podcast and have people like you and Abigail out there really advocating for that relationship. And then it's okay to have those days when you're just feeling like, man, will I ever get this right? And that there's hope on the other side, and I love that you guys give, lots of tips and advice on how to communicate better. Um, so I am so excited to have you and Abigail both join us at Warrior Unchained Live this year. This is a topic that I've been wanting to bring to the Warrior stage, because that's our audience. The audience is the mother-daughter relationship in a lot of areas, because that's really the first relationship many of us experience. And so that can have a huge hand in what your life looks like now.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, absolutely.
yeah. So, and what I think is going to be interesting is, with you and Abigail, is you both experience similar things like in your relationship, but that hearing it from her point of view and then also your point of view, I think is so important, because we will have that mix in the audience. There's quite a few moms that bring their daughters to the event,
That's
you know.
awesome.
Yeah. So can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit about, what you'll be tackling from the stage at Warrior this year?
What I'll be tackling from the stage really is communication and emotion, like dealing with emotions or handling emotions and touching on mental illness. Abigail really touches on that a lot in her talk, but I'll save that for her. But I have this theory that if mothers and daughters can truly learn how to speak with each other compassionately, learn how to talk. I mean, it's one of the reasons I became certified in conversation. Remove ego from your relationship, because there really is no place for it there, and just figure out your crap, for lack of a better word, right? Figure it out. Like, learn to love yourself and learn to love each other, just openly, honestly, and, speak kindly. I think if we can manage that emotionally charged relationship, the rest of the relationships are like a piece of cake. So
Yeah.
if we all just concentrate on that, the world is just going to get better rippling out because we know how to communicate emotionally charged conversations.
Yeah, and I can see where that kind of has a ripple effect if you learn to get a grasp on that. It's one of the most important relationships you're going to have, really. I mean, I know we have our spouses and everything, but they come later in life where if you can tackle that, with your daughters or with your mothers, those generationals, that communication, and I know your beliefs and that it can literally change the world. And I can see that
Yeah.
in that scope of if you can communicate with the most important relationships in your life, just imagine how that's going to kind of echo out or ripple out to all the other relationships that you have.
Yeah, so it's not just necessarily the relationship, but in order to have a great relationship with your daughter or anybody really, you have to have a great relationship with yourself. You
Yeah.
have to be able to accept all of you and have a good relationship with yourself. And so if you have a world full of people that are learning, especially us, right? Our age group, if we can change that dynamic to it's okay to be human, it's okay to be sad, it's okay to feel feelings. You don't want to live in them, but there's nothing like they're not good or bad. They just are. And
Right.
love yourself through it all. I feel like that will just change for the next generation. And they'll do better than us, right? So that's kind of how it goes.
I agree. And I think as moms, when we show up and we kind of allow ourselves to be vulnerable, because there is something about like not seeing your own mom as like a person. Like it's just mom, it's a person on a pedestal, but that
Mm-hmm.
person still has feelings and, dreams and trauma that they've experienced. So what advice would you give to a daughter who's really struggling to see their mom as like just a person?
Oh, geez, that's a good one. That would normally be Abigail's question.
I
I
love
would just,
talking about
yeah,
it.
no, I mean, honestly, just they're human. All the things that you are going through, all the doubts and the questions and the insecurities that you feel about yourself, your mom feels about herself.
Yeah,
And it's really just a matter of how to communicate those feelings with each other so that you're hearing what is being said and
right.
not just perceiving through your own experiences. We
Yeah.
have a thing that we like to say all the time, her and I, is, hey, this is what I heard. Is that what you meant to say? Because
Ooh.
9 times out of 10, what she hears or I hear isn't actually what was intended to be said. And that's a huge hurdle in the relationship right there.
I agree. My oldest daughter and I, Kelly and I are both on a podcast this morning talking about the mother daughter journey. And with my daughter and I, like, we communicate differently in that I'm a very literal person and she's very figurative. So when I say something and it's an interpretation and vice versa. And so I think what you just shared is very profound in that if we could have just taken a step back, maybe when she was in high school and said, okay, this is what I'm hearing that you're saying, and then clarify that communication and be like, then I think we could have, met on that common ground a little sooner, maybe.
I mean, I think it's huge what you just said, not just a matter of this is what I'm hearing, but also just acknowledging that we're all different. In conversation, there's actually 4 distinct conversation styles. How people receive and give information. And when they're receiving information in a style that's, uncomfortable to them, then they automatically shut off and start hearing other things. And
Yeah.
it's the same thing with personalities, right? Some of us are very bubbly, some of us are like, ooh, emotions, no. And so just recognizing that we're all different and it's
Well,
okay.
and not just that, but then throw mental health into the equation. And we have
Yes.
personality, but then there's mental health. And yeah, those go hand in hand and personality disorders and mental health disorders and things like that. And then trying to like find our way through this ocean of all of these different things. I mean, I don't even, it's interesting how to navigate that as a mom and as a daughter,
Right.
so I love that you and Abigail individually, but then also together tackle those topics. So talk a little bit about how mental health has played a role in your relationship and, what you've done to strengthen your bond, by kind of conquering that.
Yeah. So mental health is something that just runs through our family. And for generations, that's something that hasn't been talked about, right? It's like you
Right.
hide that kind of dirty laundry in the closet and you don't speak about it. And so when it first surfaced, I didn't even have any idea that it wasn't in existence. I just always thought there was something wrong with me. I didn't like myself very much. I never thought mental illness because it wasn't something we discussed. And so for quite a while, we fought it, right? Oh, it's like a broken arm. Let's get this thing fixed instead of learning how to live with it. And it wasn't until we learned that, you know what, this is part of our lives. We need to navigate this and learn how to live with it, acknowledge that we have it, accept it, love it, honor it. That was the turning point. Like we just both had to take responsibility for our own illnesses and realize it was our job to fix them, not fix them, but to learn how to live with them.
Right. And I like that you use the word navigate because I think that's a really great word to describe it because you can navigate it. There's going to be ebbs and flows within that navigation system. And it's not fixing it because like you said, it's your mental health. This the things that you're struggling with are probably always going to be there to some capacity. And so you
Right.
have to learn to navigate it.
You need to learn what, I mean, triggers them, right? What I say in the chapter that I wrote, I talk about mental illness and like it's a dance living with mental illness.
Yeah.
Sometimes the mental illness leads, sometimes you're in the lead, and you need to learn what causes the mental illness to take control. And when it does, you need to honor that it has and kind of sit back and work through what's happening instead of keep pushing through. Because if you try to keep pushing through, it just gets worse and worse and worse. So that's kind of how we've learned. We the more we just honor it, and when it takes control, we sit back and say, okay, why? And we learn what it was, and we navigate around that the next time, then we lose the lead more often.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean,
And,
less
and
often.
that's
We lose the lead less often.
right. But it's a great way to look at it. And sometimes it's hard to get to that point where you can really acknowledge that you both have to, because we're as moms, we're usually fixers, right? We want to
Right.
make everything better for our kids. So on the podcast we were both on earlier, you talked about a lighthouse. Can you kind of give that analogy?
Sure. So the lighthouse, because I live in Rhode Island, I'm on the coast. And the story of the lighthouse is it's there for the fishermen to guide their way homes. So the lighthouse does not go out into the ocean to find lost fishermen and direct them back to safety. The lighthouse just stands in its power, shines its light so that the fishermen can find their own way home, guides them there. And I say, I wish I had thought of this when Abigail and Emily were growing up, that because I tried to direct every move. I didn't want them to be hurt. I didn't want them to feel the things that I felt. And so I directed all the moves instead of just standing there in my power and learning how to love me so that I could guide them on that same journey. And so
Yeah.
that is, it took a long time to learn that, but that's what I try to do now. I try to make myself happy
Yeah,
and
it's a
live the best
beautiful.
life I can be so I can guide them to do the same.
Yeah, and I think it's a beautiful way to look at it. I think it's a great metaphor for the mother-daughter journey and how to approach it with a different mindset. That lighthouse, not that you're out there, struggling yourself trying to save them when you can barely keep yourself afloat, you
Yep.
know. Um, and for moms that have, multiple kids, um, that's also an interesting journey that I have found because I do have two daughters who are very different from one another. They're a lot alike in some ways, but they're very different. So then as a mom, you know, we have to kind of handle each one in a different way in how you relate to both. Do you experience that too?
Oh, yes, yes. I made so many mistakes there. I can't even count them. I
Yeah.
have two daughters who are extremely different, just like yours, and I always tried to navigate like their relationship for one, right? I want you guys to love each other. You're sisters. You should be there for each other. It hurts me when you aren't nice to each other. And my direction, my like fingers being in their relationship and not letting them figure it out, actually made it worse because then they just resented each other for the things I was saying to them.
True.
So you have to like treat them differently. For me, anyway, in my experience, figure out how to treat them differently, but also figure out how to let them have their own relationship. Like draw the boundary. Okay, if you want to be mean to each other, could you, you know, it upsets me, so please go somewhere else to do it. Make sure nobody's bleeding, but at the same token, give you the
Right.
space to figure it out.
Yeah. And that's hard because they have
So hard.
a version of each other that that you don't see. You know, you see the best in them, you see a different version of them compared to what they see of each other. And with my daughters too, is they were so different. You know, my oldest struggled through school more, where my younger one, school came easy. So she was generally like an A student, you know. So with the one that was struggling, I found I made sure I went to parent teacher meetings. I was trying to tackle everything. I was that lighthouse swimming out to the fishermen, essentially trying to solve all the problems. And
Mm-hmm.
where my older one, I was like, you know, she's doing great. I don't need to go to parent teachers. But that bit me later on because she really felt like, you know, in hindsight, she's like, you weren't there for me. You know, yeah, I was doing great, but where was you weren't out there cheering for me because my focus was on the one that was, you know, struggling. And that's a
Yep.
really hard thing to kind of look back and say, you're right. You're
Right.
right. Holy cow.
So,
Like I missed
yeah.
a big step there with one because I was trying to save the other one.
Yes.
And
The words that were used when we finally got to a place where we could talk about it, where I always felt like I was being put on the back burner,
yeah,
which caused a lot of resentment towards her sister because if she could just do better, mom would be able to pay attention to me, right?
yeah,
So there's so much to it. I'm still learning.
yeah. It's an interesting topic. It really is. So I can't wait to put you on the stage at Warrior and to let the audience, you know, the women that are out there, because I think we all have some sort of a complex relationship with our moms or our daughters. You know, even if it's a really good relationship, I think everyone can use, you know, just more advice and insight into those relationships. And because I think we're all there at this event specifically to improve ourselves in some way, shape, or
Right.
form, whether it's our business or our professional life or both. And relationships are a huge part of who we are. So I'm so excited to have you speak at Warrior this year. And you're
I'm very
coming in. Where are you located again? You're Rhode
Rhode
Island.
Island. Rhode Island.
Awesome.
Yep. Coming in
Yeah.
from Rhode Island.
And Abigail too, right? She's right there by you.
Yes. Yep.
So we'll have three of you coming from Rhode Island because Nicole Magic also is in
Yeah.
Rhode Island.
Yeah.
So all
Yeah.
three of you will be coming in from out of state. So anyone who's out there listening today, make sure you get your ticket. Warrior Unchained Live 2023 is at the Kalahari Convention Center in Wisconsin Dells, September 23rd and 24th. You can do a VIP upgrade that includes Friday night the 22nd with our VIP speaker Pat Miller of the Idea Collective, the Idea Collective Small Business Incubator. That's all I have to say. And
Yeah.
then we have entertainment with Susie Moon, who is hilarious. And I love so Susie Moon's going to be a lot of fun. Her business is called Penny Liner Productions, and so anyone who doesn't like more of a PG-13, PG-18, whatever that is show, maybe should skip Friday night after Pat speaks. But it'll be a lot of fun. So I'm excited to bring you in. And any thoughts on any expectations that you have for Warrior Unchained? This is your first year, so you're kind of going in blind a little bit.
I am going in blind. Um, I know you and you always bring it, so I'm super excited. I know it's going to be epic.
Yeah.
And there's just something about being in the room with a bunch of women who are working on being the best versions of themselves. Like the energy is just amazing and I'm excited to be part of it.
Yeah, that the energy is something that's hard to describe. And you've been to events and things with other women, and where there is this palpable energy in the room when you get in there, and it's like it just levels you up. There's something that happens, and so you can't help but leave feeling energized and inspired. Plus, you have all this extra knowledge to take with you. So I'm just stoked about it. So I'm
I'm,
really happy that
yeah, I'm super excited to be able to be adding some of the energy to the event. So that's
yeah. Absolutely. And then you and Abigail will have booths. So what's great is because now all the speakers, I feel like this event's a little bit different than some other events. Still got that darn cough. Um, and that the speakers usually play full out too. They're usually there for the most of the event, if not all of the event. So
mhm.
the attendees get to know you. They can come up afterwards. If you're listening, you can go up and talk to Kelly and Abigail at the end. If you have some additional questions, they'll have vendor booths there. They'll be at the tables with you. So it's a really great way to build those relationships and talk directly with the speakers who are there, which sometimes the speakers are a little more unavailable at other events, I find.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, I'm very excited.
yeah. Well, thanks so much for coming on Facebook Live. And we're also streaming on LinkedIn Live as well. So
Mhm.
thanks for coming on live in all the places with me today. And I can't wait to see you in person.
Same.
Yeah, we've been doing a lot of virtual work, so I'm excited
You
to
know,
get in person and yeah. Well, awesome. All right, everyone. So if you want to actually, before we go real quick, can you tell everyone where they can find your podcast and any programs or products that you offer?
sure. Yep. You can access the podcast on our website, which is themotherdaughterjourney.com. It's also found on all of the platforms, Apple, Spotify, and all of that. We have the Mother Daughter Journey on Facebook as well as TikTok. Yeah. So,
Awesome. Yeah, go out and search the mother daughter journey, and I'll put the link for the podcast in here. I'll grab it off of either Spotify or I'll grab it off iTunes. But yeah, at least you'll know where to look. So I'll drop the links in there. Otherwise, thanks again so much, Kelly, and we will talk to everybody pretty soon.